What's up guys, and welcome back to another episode of the RTG Career Mode. This is episode number 21. We started this stuff on the back of our cup run in the last episode where we played 3 cup games ranging from the last 32 all the way through to the quarterfinal round in the space of 7 days. And as we progressed through all of them, we make it into the semi-finals. We'll be taking on Girona. You'll see both legs, both away and at home in today's episode as well. And of course, in the last episode, I talked at length about my feelings on that as well. And I just want to start today's episode by saying, as you go through the scouting update and the academy update here as well, there is no right or wrong answer to this. Like, I know sometimes I can be quite opinionated on football, and I say this like all the time. Like, I am 30 years old. I know, and 31 years old in November as well. I say this all the time, football's never been better. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the quality of football has never been better in my lifetime than where we are right now. I really do believe that. The ability of the football on display in general, the strength of the pyramid and so on and so forth, the availability of being able to, coverage, for example, never been better. 100% never been better. And I am not one of those cynics that's like, football was better in my day. I was more passionate. No. Like, football, let's be totally honest here. Football has never been better. Like, that is just the goddamn honest truth. I can get a little bit tired of when you hear old heads talking about how, oh yeah, well, back in my day. It's like, well, it's not back in your day now. Comparing the two eras, I don't think anyone can deny that nowadays there's more coverage, there's more availability for the games, and in general, the quality in general, in my opinion, not just at the top level, but all through the pyramid and all throughout the world has never been better. I firmly believe that. But there are certain things that, like I said, I do think could be improved upon, and certain things that could be changed, or certain things that I do kind of yearn for, if you will. So I want to start this by saying, there's no right or wrong answer to what I was talking about in the last episode. There's no right or wrong answer here. Personally, yes, I believe that, when I was talking about the cups, I do believe that the gap between the rounds should be shorter. There should be no replays. I mean, that one I'm a little bit more open to debate about, and that there should only be one major cup competition, and the Carabao Cup in English football, for example, should be scrapped. But there is no right or wrong answer. So, if you hear me talking about this sort of stuff, and you think, oh, I'm not sure about that, Doxy boy. There is no right or wrong answer. If you disagree with me, if you think the gap between the rounds should be as it is right now, quite a large gap, at least in this year's English FA Cup, the gaps have been about 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes even longer than that between the latter rounds. That's totally fine. That's totally fine. There is no right or wrong answer to this. It's just my opinion, and to me, it's something that I think Spanish football gets spot on, because as we head into today's episode, our first game was a 2-0 away at the Real Arena against Real Sociedad in north of Spain. But you know what? I wasn't fussed one bit. And why is that? Because 4 days later, we travelled to Girona, away from home, for the first leg of our Copa del Rey semi-final at the Estadio de Montilivi. And heading into this game, again, this is why I really, really like the Copa del Rey in Spanish football. Firstly, no replays. Yes, it's a 2-leg semi-final, unlike in English football, but even so, there are no replays whatsoever. It's just flat one-game knockout, which I think is fantastic. Really adds to the pressure and the excitement and the drama as well. But also as well, as I mentioned there, the gap. Very, very little waiting time between the rounds. So heading in to this game here, we literally just came through the previous 3 rounds, and now we've got a 2-legged semi-final. So our interest was fully focused on this game. I threw out a backup side against Real Sociedad because I wasn't really fussed about it. I was more focused on our first ever cup semi-final. The first leg away against Girona. Very tight, tense game. Adrenaline getting through me a little bit in the second half. So I started to build up a little bit more on the offensive end and get some chances. And in the end, the one real clear-cut chance I got, I took it. Adam Zorgani scores his second of the competition and the only goal of the game to give us a 1-goal lead heading back to the Estadio La Rosaleda. And this is something else I really think as well that the Copa del Rey kind of get right. Now, everyone knows that the FA Cup now, the semi-finals, are played at Wembley. Here's my opinion on this, right? I've never really talked about this, but here's my opinion on this. I personally think that as cool as it is to go to Wembley, you know, my team Millwall in the past 10, 12 years, we've actually had some decent cup runs. We've been to the semi-final a couple of times. Obviously got to the FA Cup final back in 2004. We don't need to talk about what happened in that FA Cup final. Let's not worry about it. But even so, you know, I can see why, you know, getting to Wembley, for example, Championship side this year in Sheffield United reached semi-finals, so they could have the day out at Wembley as well. I personally don't think the semi-finals should be at Wembley. I think that should be reserved for just the final. And the reason being, and I am going to use this word again, is because of the magic, if you will. The magic of getting to Wembley. It does kind of diminish a little bit if you're playing the semi-final there as well. Like, the road to Wembley should not include the semis as well, because it's like, well, then doesn't the road stop at the semis? Do you know what I mean? It's like it should be just reserved for the final. And I take the point that you would say, well, semi-finals are one-legged affair. How do you sort that out? Surely it wouldn't be fair if you just play, you know, one game semi-finals, because that means that one team, whoever's drawn as the home team, gets the home pitch advantage. Well, no, because back in the day, some people might not remember this, but back in the day, the semi-finals were actually played at a neutral venue. Our semi-final, for example, back in 2004, was against Sunderland. But it wasn't played at the Stadium of Light, and it wasn't played at the Den. It was played at Old Trafford. And it meant that even though we weren't playing at... Well, back then again, Wembley was under construction. The new Wembley was under construction. Even though the final was just played at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff in Wales, it was, you know, like, obviously the stadium size, if you will, it wasn't a big difference, because I don't think we actually filled Old Trafford, us or Sunderland. I don't think we filled Old Trafford together. I can't remember Manchester United played their semi-final. I think it was Villa Park. Might have got that wrong. Football fans, correct me if I'm wrong there. But the point is, you can still play at like a really, really cool stadium in a neutral venue, you know, somewhere in the country, maybe a middle ground somewhere as well. And because of the infrastructure and, again, stadium sizes nowadays, you're not going to have a massive... Okay, sure, it's not going to be as big as a 90,000-seater stadium in Wembley, but it's not going to be like a massive downgrade. It's not like you're suddenly playing like a 15, 20,000-seater stadium. You're still going to have a big stadium to fill the semi-final at. To me, it keeps the magic of Wembley being the final destination. The destination, you know, alive, as opposed to playing it in the semi-final, and then the magic kind of gets lost a little bit, knowing if you get to the semi-final, you might be back there again in 4 weeks if you also make the final as well. So I definitely think that Wembley should be reserved for just the final. It's the final destination. The final stop. Wembley, the home of English football. I don't see why it should be the final four as well. To me, it just kind of loses the appeal and loses the magic of Wembley a little bit. And like I said there, for me, if it's going to be a two-legged affair, like in Spanish football, home and away is class, because it means you've got like a playoff kind of feel to it, like you do in the English football leagues, Championship, League 1 and League 2. You have the playoffs, you know, home and away, two-legged affair, and then you've got the final, of course, being at Wembley if we're going for the semi-final. So obviously that to me keeps the appeal of Wembley alive, but you also get to see your team out for the final games of the season if you make the playoffs as well, and then you get the magic of playing at Wembley too. But if you have it as a one-legged affair, then I don't see why we can't go back to the old days like we used to. Again, back when I was a kid, playing at a neutral venue. To me, I think that kept the magic of Wembley, you know, more, I don't know what the word is here, but it made it more magical. It's the best way of putting it. But anyway, for the final game of this episode, this would be the final game. We had a bit of an inconsistent run in La Liga, dropped a couple of points against Real Sociedad and Rayo Vallecano, but I wasn't really too fussed about that because I was still fully focused on this. The Copa del Rey semi-final second leg. Won the first leg by a goal to nil. Adam Zorgain with the only goal of the game, but then the second leg, he scored in every single round, and whilst he didn't score in the first leg, he scores the goal in this game to set us on our way. He's my player of the season. I absolutely love him. Adama Traore gives us the opener, and then later on in the game, 15 minutes on the clock, it just felt right. Luis Munoz scores his first of the competition. The captain makes it 2. That's the dagger. That's 3-0 over 2 legs. We are going through to the Copa del Rey final. And the icing on the cake was this. 90th minute, just as the clock ticks over as we celebrate here, Ahmed, out of the academy, showing great potential. First goal for the club. Stayed up there for a corner and tapped in from 5 yards. You know the game's over when your centre half doesn't sprint back to the halfway line but stays in the 6-yard area. But there it is, Malaga 3, Girona 0, 4-0 over 2 legs. And for the first time in the save. We are going to a cup final. But here is one thing that I would say I would change if I was running the Copa del Rey, if you will. They get everything spot on apart from the grand final. That's because it's played before the end of the La Liga season. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I've said that before. I'm not a fan of that. We go in there, Copa del Rey final, and we all take on Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid after they overcame Athletic Bilbao 4-1 over 2 legs with their big 3-0 win away in the Basque region. So it's Atletico Madrid, Malaga final. It will become for the final games of La Liga season. That is one thing I'm not a fan of, but one thing I am a fan of is how well we turn this season around is the change of formation. In 6th place right now, clinging on to a Europa Conference League spot, 7 points behind Simeone's side in 4th. I'm not really thinking about that. All I'm thinking about now is that Copa del Rey final and trying to cling on to either 5th or 6th. But that will end this episode of the RTG Career Mode, guys. Big thank you for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. If you had, then please do drop a like. Most love to you all. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you for the next episode of the RTG Career Mode very soon.